Hello, everybody. This is Chris Callahan with UVM Extension Agricultural Engineering. Back with you talking post and wire support structures for SWD netting. That's spotted wing Drosophila. This is the next video in our series where we're going to talk about setting posts, running cables, and then tensioning the cables. So just a quick review of where we've been. Again, the starting site for this project was at the Berry Patch in Stephentown, New York, and the first trial of this type of structure used a mix of wooden posts, and steel posts. And this picture kind of shows you both of them in place once they were installed with the cables run and just after we got the netting up. But you can see the wooden posts are going to end up in the ground. The steel posts sit on top of a flanged anchor. This video is going to dig into how we do the post installation and get the cable initially tensioned. So you remember that we used an earth auger. Actually, used 3 different kinds of earth augers, and then some manual labor and some manual post hole diggers to really get the holes dug for the wooden posts. We ended up using those earth augers to drive the steel anchors as well. That's in the previous video. If you haven't had a chance to check that out, it's probably worth taking a peek right now before you come back here. And where that lands, it gives us these perimeter anchors around the edge of the planting, and those are going to be used for tying down our cable that makes the grid for the netting to stay on. And then we also drove these flanged anchors here on the bottom right-hand corner. And the flange becomes important in this video because that's where the steel posts are going to rest. The steel posts are hollow. They slide over this eye, sit on this flange, and we're going to end up putting a bolt through the post and the eye to secure them. Okay, so one of the key things in terms of the approach to this is do the perimeter posts and cables first. The reason is that's going to give you essentially a 4-sided structure with relatively well-tensioned cable to support all of your interior cables. The other reason for doing this is you tend to have the most space to work with around the perimeter. So for doing your first set of tensioning, it's easier to start with the perimeter. Now, one of the key differences between the perimeter posts and the other posts, the interior posts, is the cable is run through the posts on the perimeter. So you'll see here I'm showing some of the wooden posts. The wooden posts get set loosely into the ground, but it's going to be easier to run that cable through the posts, through the hole that you've drilled through the posts, when they're lying down. And so you can see in this photo on the left, all the posts are lying down. This cable, you can see, very loose. We haven't tensioned this at all. It's just cable running through the post. These first couple have been placed in the ground in the holes that were dug for them, just loosely. We haven't done anything to fill these in yet, and you can see Laura and Greg and Natasha starting to put the rest of them in one by one. The cable is thread through all of these, okay? And so on the right-hand side, you can see almost done with this one perimeter run. You can see the post set loosely in the hole here, cable running through the top from post to post to post. In the case of the steel post, it's actually fairly similar. You can see that the steel post has holes placed, actually welded into them or press fit into them. And we use the bottom hole for the perimeter cable. And you can see on the right hand side, we've run the perimeter cable through these posts and also some of the width cables as well. And they're just going to stay loose for now. We're going to focus on getting the perimeter posts up and tightening or tensioning that perimeter cable. And you want to lay these posts out, the steel posts out, near their flanged anchors so you can see the posts are roughly spaced where they're going to be when they're finally installed. And you can see just the tip of the one flanged anchor here. The others are similarly placed. Here's a video clip of running some of the cable through the steel post. You can see I've already run one perimeter wire through that post and the other one here going perpendicular to it. Goes through another set of the holes that's in the post. And you see, I went out straight from that post, even though it's going to go down the line here, and it's just makes it easier to run the cable if you keep it relatively straight. And you'll see, even after I get it threaded through the next post, I got to come back and feed a little bit more cable through. It's just the way it goes. Definitely easier with more than one person. Here on the left, you can see we've started putting, this is the start of placing the steel posts on their flanged anchors along this one perimeter line. And you can see that these steel posts are really just loosely in there. On the right hand side, just as a reminder, the steel posts go on the flanged anchor over the eye. A bolt then goes through the hole in the bottom of the post, and it goes through the eye, which is now covered. So sometimes it takes a little bit of rotating that steel post to get the pathway for the bolt to line up just right. And then a nut goes on that bolt and secures the post in place. You can see that these posts do have a little bit of wobble to them because the tensioning of the cable is what's going to give this strength. That bolt at the bottom of the steel post actually creates a hinge of sorts, and that's actually intended as a planned point of failure. So if there's too much load on this, it will fold over, and preventing greater damage by letting one or two posts go like that. So this is what it looks like for a post to go into place. You can see the other one's already roughly in place loosely. So Steve and Yarrow put the bottom of the post over the eye on the top of the flanged anchor, send a bolt through the post and the eye, and loosely thread a nut on. Just loose for now, just getting them all in place. Okay, so we've got our posts, our perimeter posts roughly in place, and we have the cable run through them. Now it's time to start talking about how we're going to tension the cables. And this takes a little bit of explanation, and I'd encourage you to really take a good, solid look through what we're about to cover before even trying to do this, because there is some nuance to it. On the left-hand side, you can see the tensioning setup for wooden posts, and on the right-hand side for steel posts. They're quite similar. There are a couple places where they differ. We're going to get into that, but the basic approach is the same. I made up this little illustration because I think it's easier to see first as almost a cartoon before trying to take a look at the actual videos of us doing this. One reason is some of the equipment we use to tension the cable tends to be on top of each other, and it's a little hard to make it all out. So the rough idea here is we have in this case, a wooden post. It's been sunk loosely into a hole that was augered for it. We have a cable running through the top of it. That cable comes down and goes through the eye of a perimeter anchor. And what we're going to ultimately do is want to tension this cable, pulling on this loose end to tighten up this angled run, and then to tighten up the run of cable that goes all the way to the other side where it is firmly anchored at the opposite anchor, where this loop on the other side has been fixed with a cable clamp permanently. So what we're going to do is start tugging on this cable, tighten it up. And what may not be obvious is as you start to do that, as this cable starts to get tensioned up because of the angle here down to the ground, and then the horizontal here, this post is going to tend to get pulled inward toward the planting. And so as we're tensioning up this cable, we need to do something to keep this post from going in. We want it to be plumb, straight up and down. Some people say level. When you're talking vertically, it's plumb. So some of the equipment we need to use. A level is going to be helpful. We place a level against the post to determine if it's plumb. We look at the top level site here. This is a magnetic torpedo level that is attached to one of the steel posts. You can use any level you can find as long as it's going to give you an accurate reading. We put the level on the post, we get it roughly plumb, and we keep it plumb by tightening up first of two cable winches. We have two cable winches being used. in this process. One keeps this post plumb, and it does that by looping over the top of the post. Doesn't interfere with the cable. Loop it over the top of the post, and then comes down with one of the hooks on the end of the cable winch to the anchor. So this red cable winch, the cable winch number 2, what we're calling cable winch number 2, is just here to tighten it up so that the post becomes plumb and then stays plumb. Cable winch number 1, then using 2 cable grips, which are shown in the upper left-hand corner, cable grip just grips the cable, and as you pull on this open eye here, it puts more force on the cable and pulls it in the direction that the eye is being pulled. It's essentially a way of grabbing onto a cable and pulling on it. And so we have one here on the loose end of the cable and one here at the top of the cable in this diagonal run. And so those 2 cable grips in combination with cable winch number 1, as cable winch number 1 is tightened, you turn this handle up and down and tighten the cable winch, bringing its 2 loose ends closer to each other. That's going to tension this cable. I'm showing 2 cable winches here. One is it's an orange cable winch, and I'll put specific information about it in the description. This is the one that we ended up preferring. This other one is more standard or run-of-the-mill, easier to find. We just found working with this one to be a little bit more challenging. The controls to turn this from forward to neutral to reverse on the orange one were a lot easier and more reliable for us. The sort of black and silver one just felt like it took a lot more to get it to work well for us. And when you're tensioning cable, it's important to be comfortable and to know that the tool you're using is going to be dependable. I wanted to say a little bit more about what I've been calling cable winches in this video. They're also known as lever hoists, you'll see here, and these are the 2 that we used that we've got the most experience with. Now, the one on top is a slightly less expensive version. You see it's got a long handle. It uses cable and some pulleys to take up the distance. And so basically the way these things work is you run them all out to connect 2 things that you're looking to pull together. And what the ratchet mechanism does is slowly bring this cable length in or chain length in to close up the distance between 2 things. You can also use them to expand things in a more controlled way, like lowering a heavy weight down into place. So they're basically a cable and a ratchet with a handle, and a lot of their functionality comes down to how you switch between taking cable up and then loosening it. And so this one up top was I think the brand was Westward, and it's got a half-ton rating. The one on the bottom is the one that we really ended up preferring to use, and it was supplied by Gintech Shade Technologies with the rest of the materials for the structure, and it's from a company called Columbus McKinnon, and it's their Series 653. And when you look for these, you'll see that they come in all sorts of different ratings. This was a 3/4 ton. Really, for what we were doing, a half ton is fine. I think there was just availability issues at the time, so we ended up with 3/4 ton in this case. You can also order them with different lengths of chain. So I think this one was able to run out to something like 10 feet. And you can see the cable grips that we've attached. All these cable winches or lever hoists come with basically spring-loaded hooks on the end that let you attach them to anything. And so in this case, we've attached this one to 2 cable grips used for tightening up the main cable we were tensioning. We like this Columbus McKinnon option a little bit more than the other one. It's a little bit more compact, and the switch for going from forward to reverse, and these are all manual, but there's a switch for flipping it between forward and reverse and neutral, is a little bit easier to find and use, And it also has this nice little knob here for taking up a lot of length quickly when you're not under tension, and also for letting it out. It sort of overrides the handle ratchet mechanism and lets you take up chain and let it out a whole bunch at a time. So just wanted to provide a little bit more information on the two cable winches. Some people call these come-alongs as well. Cable winches, come-alongs, lever hoists. I'm sure there are other names for them, but that's what we were using. Okay, so in a nutshell, we have two cable winches. One is used to keep the post plumb. One is used to tighten the cable. So what we do first is we take cable winch number 2. We have everything sort of loosely connected. The weight of the cable winch is usually enough to keep these cable grips tightly connected to the cable. We have everything, sort of loosely connected. We have the cable winch chain completely run out, so the cable winch length is at its greatest because we're going to be taking up length as we work on this. So cable winch 2 is attached to the anchor on one end, and it's looped over or attached otherwise to the top of the cable on the other end. And we're going to start by tightening cable 2 until the level tells us that the post is plumb. You can see it's a little bit out of plumb here, leaning a little bit to the right, and once we've tightened up cable winch number 2, it comes into plumb. Great. You can see we've pulled the top of the post back over, and it's plumb. Then what we're going to do is tighten cable winch number 1 to start tensioning this cable. And so this is it loosely connected. You can see as we start to tension, start to bring cable winch 1 in, we bring the loose end up diagonally, which pulls the cable down on the other side of the perimeter anchor. And that ultimately leads to this cable throughout the post getting tighter and tighter. It's important to keep an eye on the plumb of the post. Even though we have our cable winch number 2 tightened to keep that plumb, sometimes you find things will shift, and this post, as you tighten the cable, will still want to kick in towards the center of the planting. Just keep an eye on it as you're tensioning cable winch 1. You want to keep an eye on the plumb of the post, and you may need to tighten cable winch number 2 as you go. It's important to note there is also on the other end of this cable, the cable is fixed, like I said, fixed has a loop going through the anchor on the other end, and it's fixed with a cable clamp, which is a bolt and 2 plates. And there's also another cable winch number 3, which is on the far end, also there to keep that post on the far end plumb. That will also be shifting as you tighten up this cable. So the person working on this end needs to be talking with the person on the other end. Whoever is tightening cable winch number 1 needs to take a break every now and then, check plumb on their post, tighten cable winch number 2, and also give a shout out to the person on the other end to say, is the post on the far end plumb? And do you need to tighten cable winch number 3? Okay, so this is sort of 3 cable winches working at the same time. We're trying to keep the posts on both ends plumb as we tension the cable. When do you know you're done? It's interesting. The guidance given to us by Gentech Shade Technologies is you want to tighten this cable using cable winch number 1 until you just start to see this anchor lift vertically. Again, you tighten the cable until you just start to see this cable, this perimeter anchor, lift slightly vertically. You will notice that because of the angle here, as you tighten cable winch number 1, you'll notice that the head of some of these anchors will move in a little bit. There's some deflection that happens. That's not the anchor moving up. That's the anchor moving in. You want to just be watching for when it starts to lift up, and or you may find that you can't move this cable winch anymore. It's one or the other. There are some anchors that are really, really solid in the ground, and you're not going to see them lift up and when tightening. Couple of other key points here. We made up this little tool here that I'm calling a double loop cable. This is just a spare section of cable. It's probably about 12 feet long total, doubled back on itself and clamped using cable clamps 1 and 2 to have 2 loops. One loop on the end that'll go over the top of a wooden post, and one loop on this end that'll get hooked onto, clipped onto by the cable winch that's used to keep that post plumb. We had to do this because there was no other way to really hook onto that post. Similarly, on the steel post, you need some way of hooking onto the top of that post in order to keep it plumb. And in this case, Gintech Shade Technologies provides a steel post topper that has what I'd call two little loop ears that allow you to, the topper slides into the hollow section of the post. And these 2 ears you can grab onto with the cable winch clip and use that to connect it down to the anchor. You'll see here again that torpedo level is super handy because they're magnetic on one side, and you can just attach it right to the post to be checking plumb. Want to show you a little better view of each of those tools. Here on the left hand side is that the double loop cable that we made up, and this is overall probably about 6 feet tall, something between 5 and 6 feet tall. It just gives you a little bit of an extension up to the top of the post from the whatever cable winch you're using. And one loop goes over the post. We did put a little section of rebar through the post hole at the top for the wooden posts to keep this loop off of the cable that you're actually tensioning. So it allows you to pull the post plumb while you tension the cable without this cable getting in the way of the other cable, of the main cable. And then the cable winch hooks onto the bottom down here. And on the right hand side here is that post top that I mentioned. You can see that this rectangular section, it actually goes into the top of this hollow post, and it's got a little bit of a saddle section here that goes over the hole that goes through the post. There's a bit of conduit there that follows that hole through the post, and it's slotted here to go over that. And then you end up with 2 loops that you can hook onto. Super convenient tool for handling the steel posts. So once you got the cable all fully tensioned, the way to keep it tensioned after you once you're done is to use something called a 2-bolt clamp, and that's what you see here. You see the main tension cable is coming down from the post. It goes around the eye of the anchor and comes back up, and you'll end up with this loose end. And we put a 2-bolt clamp here, and you can see the way these things work. They literally sandwich the cable between two plates, and there's an angle in these plates which helps provide resistance to the cable threading out. And there are actually 2 channels inside them that sort of accept the cable on either side, and you just tighten them up. There's 2 bolts, and you tighten them up hand tight, and then get on them with a wrench. Important to note, this needs to be done before you remove the cable winches that you've used to tension the cable. This is what's going to hold it in tension when we're done. And the other thing to note is you can see that this 2-bolt clamp is pointed is oriented so that the nuts and the end of the bolts are pointed kind of down away from where the netting will be. The netting will be on the outside of this cable, pointed on the outside of the cable. And so we want this sort of pointed down. And the point is we don't want there to be any sharp edges that might tear the netting, just even with wind pushing the netting against it. And ultimately, we ended up wrapping these in duct tape when we're done, and really sort of walking around the structure and look for any sharp edges, and just throw a coat of duct tape on there. High quality duct tape, something with some UV resistance will go a long way. to protecting that netting in the long run. And this is what the 2-bolt clamp looks like while the you can see we have this cable under tension. We have the cable winch holding the post plumb, and we've tightened up the cable to the point where we're ready to put the clamps on. And so this is the 2-bolt clamp going in on the cables while the cable winches are still in place. It's important to do that, otherwise the minute you take the tension off the cable, it's no longer in tension. So wanted to just highlight the use of these 2-bolt clamps for securing the cable when you're done tensioning. So I mentioned that on the far end of each cable, where you're not tensioning the cable, we anchor it more permanently right from the start. And that what we use to do that is something called a dead end guy grip. And it looks like kind of a heavy duty twist tie. And this is it right here. It comes in sort of this U or V shaped form, and you can see the spirals on that dead end guy grip. And they sort of match up. So this part of the spiral on this side will go into the opening here once it's wrapped around the cable. It's a little hard to get a feel for. I will do my best to add a video of that here in the near future. But you basically match these up. You send it through the anchor eye, have the cable come down the center of it as you wrap this each side around the cable. It's got a little bit of an abrasive or grit on the inside where it meets the cable, and that holds it in place. It will hold that cable exactly where you've put it on the anchor eye, so that as you tension up and over and on the other side with what we've just covered in the preceding portion of the video, that will give it resistance on this end so that you can tension the cable. And again, this is where we would have another cable winch attached from the top of this post down to this anchor to keep this post plumb. So I wanted to cover the use of dead end guy grips on the far end. Again, this is the end that doesn't get a 2-bolt clamp. The dead end guy grip is what holds the cable in place on this end. The other important thing to do once you've got the cable fully tensioned, before you take the cable winches all off of it, is install some Ubolt clamps, which are also known as cable clamps or rope clips. And they're kind of a U-bolt that goes through a yoke on the other side of the cable and catches that cable between the U-bolt and the yoke, and then you secure it with two nuts. So what I'm showing here is 2 of those Ubolt clamps on either side of the post on a fully tensioned cable. We use 2 along the perimeter, and we use 2 at the far corners of the planting, the structure, and 1 on either side everywhere else. And this post will get 1 on either side every post will get 1 on either side wherever the cable passes through it once the cable's fully tensioned. And what that does is keeps the post in place relative to the cable. So that becomes really important, especially at the corners, but throughout the entire structure. And we use something a little bit different inside the structure on the interior post, which I'll cover in the next video. But important to do this before you relieve tension, because once you relieve tension, the post will be able to shift on you if you haven't. So here's what that looks like. This is the RO putting a U-bolt clamp to fix this one post. So I hope this video has given you an overview and hopefully some helpful hints and how-tos for getting your perimeter posts in place and getting your perimeter cables nicely tensioned so that you can move on to doing the interior cables and posts as a next step. In the next video, we'll cover how to place interior posts and how to connect them with the cables to support the netting inside the planting.